Good evening to all, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for the Pies Footy Show tonight. A few things to get through. We have Bruzzy and contract talks have taken a turn. The tune of the narrative around this conversation has changed from February through to the present time in March. So we'll get through that. DC and Bobby Hill will be a part of that conversation, the moving parts behind that. We're going to talk about Oscar Allen and what's happening with him at the Eagles and how he's being linked furthermore to Collingwood. Darcy Moore has been appointed the AFL president, the president of the AFLPA, and we'll get through some Pies footy tipping as well. I think most of us, looking at the league, did quite well. So well done to all, but we'll tackle that a little bit later in the show. Of course, we're starting a little bit earlier, so on Wednesdays, just to accommodate for my commitments outside of this passion project. I will be doing the Pies Footy Show from 5:45 onwards on a Wednesday. So put that in your calendar. I do apologize for those who can't or couldn't watch the show tonight. But if you're watching this after the fact, that's fine. You watching it after live, it doesn't matter. We're neither here nor there when it comes to that. But let's start with Brazy Maynard. So let's go back way back when, to the start of the off-season, the silly season, where North approached Brazy Maynard regarding an opportunity to come to North Melbourne at the end of 2025. Bruzzy is currently an unrestricted free agent. So what that means when teams go into a conversation with Bruzzy's management, and more importantly, we want to know what that means for Collingwood and the fans. Being an unrestricted free agent, he is that because he's, as of this year, it would be his 10th year of service for Collingwood, making him an unrestricted free agent. We have quite a few of those. You look at players like Pendles, Sidey, Elliott, those types of players who have been long-time servants and mainstays at our club. That will find that length of service will find you as an unrestricted free agent. Now, firstly, when North approached him, you look at sort of the way the landscape is with free agency at the moment. We can refer to the Harry Perryman situation. Usually clubs who are trying to poach these unrestricted free agents will have to pay overs to get these players to certain clubs. And if you're Brazy Maynard's management, you look at how much players are going for at the moment. Dan Houston and Perryman are allegedly Houston and Perryman are going for that 900K mark. So definitely they would have their tails up and go, well, why not shop around? Why wouldn't we consider Bruzzy going elsewhere if he can get a big bag? I don't know how much he's on. I'm not even going to have a guess. It's not my forte. I don't think it's anyone's forte. I think the numbers that come out are really just a stab in the dark, trying to put a tail with a blindfold on, trying to pin a tail with a blindfold on. So yeah, that's where we're at. And initially it sounded like he'd rejected any sort of further negotiations with North Melbourne at this point. And then in February, he suggested that he was actually very close to signing on at the Pies. And a lot of us were glad to hear that. In that time, a lot of fans were bullish and really certain that he would be a one club player. He lives and breathes black and white. He embodies everything that you want him to be. He has a winning culture embedded into the way he plays and the way he goes about his footy and general life. So it would be incredibly disappointing if we were to lose someone like Bruzzy. But the reality is, I said it's not the worst thing. And I say it's not the worst thing because if, for example, so he's 29, so he was drafted in 2014. We would have been 18 then, 19 in 2015. Makes him, he's 29 this year. So I still think with unrestricted free agency, if he gets a long contract and a big contract, I don't think he moves for anything less than 800,000. And you might say, oh, well, how is, zooming out with the lens and looking at this objectively, you ask, well, how's Bruzzy, or other fans from other clubs might say, how's Bruzzy worth 800, 900K? That's just the way it is at the moment with the collective bargaining agreement growing year on year. Teams have got money to spend, but they're also looking for a certain type of player. And Bruzzy 100% ticks the box, the criteria that clubs need who are lacking a winning culture. Think St Kilda, North Melbourne. I'll probably stick with those two for now, who lack a bit of a winning culture at the moment. More so North Melbourne. If he gets like a 4 or 5 year contract, we will be compensated depending on where we finish, depending on how long the contract is. Like I said, if it's 4 or 5 years, depending on his age, it's 29. It's not the worst age to be going as an unrestricted free agent. And the amount we're talking, what is the final line when it comes to how much he is agreeing to? We will be compensated on that basis. So we could very well get a late first round pick if Bruzzy was to consider leaving. And with what he has said, fast forwarding to today, in a recent discussion with the likes of Ralphie and Clark at Herald Sun, it seems like with this one quote, he said, "I'm going to let my footy do the talking for a little while," which is probably indicating that we are now at a stalemate. The tune has changed and it's not as clear as we once thought it was. And this is typically the case with contracts. Like Perryman, fair enough, you could see him leaving GWS looking for more opportunity in the midfield. But when the Dan Houston rumors came out, I remember looking in the comment section, I would say 75% of you were certain he wouldn't leave. He's loyal to the club, blah, blah, blah. He's got 4 years on his contract left. Brazy Maynard doesn't have that. And more and more, I'm just starting to think, well, I think he's just going to try and get what he deserves as the player that he is right now. Like I said, I think he still has 5 good years left in him, and he's been incredibly durable. So anyone who does try and poach Bruzzy knows they're going to get somebody who, injured or not, he will get through to the weekend and perform for your side, regardless of what injuries he's carrying. He had the plantar fasciitis all last year. He's managed it and has run into some issues with it in the preseason. But guess what? He's still finding a way to feature in our games. And in that game against Port Adelaide, he was amazing. His 1%ers, the intangibles, he kicks 2 goals. He just lifts you. He gives you that energy. So it's a sensitive subject, most definitely. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom. But unfortunately, it sounds like we have to wait till late in the year to see what happens. And then we tie in the moving parts, right? Probably, if we look at it from the club's perspective, maybe we're waiting to negotiate later in the year to see what his health status is like. But once again, Bruzzy's management will argue, well, you can't be doing that. Like he's been healthy for 10 years. You can't wait and see if his foot pulls up all right. He's playing, and he's playing very well. So there's 2 sides to that conversation. And then the other thing is, we still aren't sure how many of our older players are going to retire. And some of those players are still on big contracts, like Sidey and Pendle. So whoever didn't extend. So I think Jamie Elliott is one of those players who hasn't extended. Jeremy Howe hasn't extended in recent times. So I still imagine they'd be on some decent coin. You'd think Will Hoskin-Elliott would be on something, nothing astronomical. Mason Cox, Tom Mitchell. These sort of players will be occupying some sort of salary cap space. And then even though players like Sidey and Pendles, who I believe had extended either in the offseason or during last season, they would be on lesser contracts, but still it takes up a portion. So it does cloud your judgment as to what our salary cap book looks like at the end of the year. You throw in Brody Myercheck in there as well, who might be out of contract at the end of this year. I'd have to check the out of contract status of these players, but I know most of them are due for conversation at the end of the year at some point this year. So I'm certain that this is definitely a factor in why we haven't seen the likes of Bruzzy extend his contract. You look at Darcy Cameron and Bobby Hill in another regard, in the same boat. The only difference is they have years on their contract. I know Bobby's contract ends next year. I'm not sure where DC is at the moment, but we just don't know the lay of the land when it comes to how tight our salary is right now. Let's catch up to some of the comments. Luke, how are you going? JC, what's going on? Madison says, Pies Footy. Lockie, g'day, mate. How we doing? I hope you're well. Bruzzy wants to be paid, says Manny. If we lose him, we are fucked. Put a good money on the table. He gives it his all every week. He's a spiritual player. You can't buy that. 100%. But by the same token, Manny, don't you think clubs are going to come at him hard because they know he's the spiritual player that everybody requires at a club to be successful? Obviously, I couldn't fathom what our defense would look like next year without a Brazy Maynard in the side, but it is a reality. And while we're talking about the positives of why it's important to keep someone like Bruzzy, opposition clubs are doing the exact same thing. Chris Talbot, hey Anthony, how you going? Ben says, gut reaction was that the Bruzzy media talk was just spinning stories and playing the better wage game. Rightfully so, confident he won't go anywhere. Yeah, it's an opportunity for the media to spin. It's just the way the mainstream media works. And much like Bobby and DC, they're probably players who are trying to improve on last year and actually request a better contract offer at year's end. So it's a good point there, Ben. I totally agree. And I think it's probably a strategy that a lot of agencies like to employ with their players who are going into their final last couple of years at their respective club. Lockie says he won't go because his heart is with us. Peter G says Bruzzy's pivot in language and thinking was surprising, but I'm 80% confident he will stay. That could diminish quickly if he hasn't signed by round 15, 16. This is the other problem, and this is the nature of the game of the sports entertainment world, is the longer these players don't extend their contracts, the more the murmurs will grow and it will fester, and mainstream media will be licking it up and portraying it and spinning it in a way that sometimes when the media, they do these things where they not manipulate the situation, but they're definitely having an imprint on it. It can definitely affect what's happening internally. I know clubs will never come out and say that, but it's going to affect those involved. That's just the way it is, right? Freddie Jong, how you going? Tark Media says Bruzzy is a standard driver. He'll do wonders to get a culture up and going in a cellar dweller. Makes sense for rivals to go hard for him. That being said, I hope he stays too. And look, when you're talking about a club like North Melbourne, who don't have big money contracts in their squad right now, or not as many as the upper echelon clubs, you just know they're going to come harder and harder and harder. And bear in mind, guys, I know this may mean something or nothing, but Bruzzy's brother does work at North Melbourne. So if they want to work together, albeit in different departments of the club, there's an opportunity to work with your brother. And if you ask me, without taking off my Collingwood lens, if you said, hey, mate, you're 29, you're going 30, we're halfway through the season and you guys aren't premiership fancies anymore, do you want to be a part of a club that is young, budding, and has the potential to become a really special club in the next 3-4 years? We want you to be a part of that. Oh, and by the way, your brother works here. So, and we'll give you $900K. Oh, and it will be a 4-year contract with a potential clause to play a fifth season, depending on whether you hit the quota of games we want you to hit in your 4th season. So I'm looking at it like that, and I'm like, man, how much percent am I certain that Bruzzy will remain at the club given that logic? What do you guys think? Let's get a poll in, and I'll ask the question. Let's go. I want you guys to be honest. Will Bruzzy remain at Collingwood in 2026? Yes or no? Asks Pies Footy. All right. So let's get back to the questions. Bruzzy has offers from St Kilda and North for sure. 100%. We know St Kilda have this massive war chest of cash. If they're throwing 12 mil at Finn Callahan and they're trying their hand with De Koning, then what's 900K to someone like Brazy Maynard? What's he on now, Luke? This is a good question, Luke. What is Braden Maynard on now? I would say, if I had to guess, I'd say 650. And that's, look, let's be honest, guys. Like, if that is unders for someone like Braden Maynard, if the club need to tread carefully with this. If they take the piss with these negotiations with Bruzzy and they say, mate, we can only give you 750, stay, we want you to be a one club player, it might tick him off the wrong way. And maybe they've already done that in some conversations. In that article, just the way he's changed, the way he's worded his feelings about where the negotiations are at, it sounds like we're at a stalemate for now. Manny said he's on no more than 600. Luke says, and it's the last year paying for part of Treloar's wage. Interesting. See, I don't know, Luke, I don't know much about the logistics and the numbers behind the Treloar, the Stevenson, the Grundy. One question to those who do, what does that look like? How do you know, for example, this is the last year paying for part of Treloar's wage? Is that because this is the last year of his contract with Collingwood that he had? And yeah, where did you find this out? Would be my next question. Your local Espresso says, love Maynard, but at his age and with TJ and Ryan in the works, we should consider the pick 18 and 14. We'll probably get him from North. Yeah, so with compensation, we'd get a late first round pick, depending how well we go. And then, yeah, you do have to consider, we do have TJ and Ryan waiting in line to get their opportunity. I think TJ has this potential to be a really athletic aerial running player. He's not as grunty as Braden Maynard, and Jacob Ryan probably fits the blue collar a little bit more than a TJ, but I like TJ's potential. He's fast. He's comfortable with the ball in hand. To be honest, he reminds me more of a Jeremy Howe, TJ. So how tall is Tujath? Let's find out. He's 188. How tall is Jeremy Howe? 190. So he's got an inch or something like that on TJ. So probably not like Jeremy's close to. He's a third key tall and close to a second, just not as good one-on-one. TJ is probably closer to that third, fourth string in defense. So it's not like for like if we were to lose Bruzzy and TJ was to come in. And TJ's a little bit more slimmer as well. So he definitely need to put on more side to replicate what Bruzzy does on the field. But if TJ can bring his own game and excel in other areas that Bruzzy didn't, but I think something that is also severely underrated with Bruzzy's game is his ability to slingshot from the back half. We always talk about, well, now we talk about Houston. We talked about Dacos in 2022 and 2023. We're talking Josh Dacos, but I actually really rate when Bruzzy has time on the ball. He's really good at piercing the corridor and penetrating, giving us some attacking flow. So that's something that I think is severely underrated. Have you guys noticed that? I remember, like, I see it all the time, but specifically one scenario that springs to mind is that game against Carlton in 2022 from the back half. I think he absolutely belted it to Pendles in the corridor, and then Pendles turned, snapped it over to Jamie Elliott, and then the rest was history. So I remember that fondly, but I think that's something Braden Maynard does quite frequently and is probably something that is a little bit underrated in the game that he serves us with at Collingwood. Peter says if he does go, then you would think the compensation would be similar to that of a Josh Battle. Bruzzy would be getting offered a 5-year deal around 800 to 850. Yeah, probably. You'd like to think so. I think Josh Battle's 27, 28 in the same similar bracket. 26, so he's 27, 2 years older than Josh Battle. Maybe, yeah, maybe. We won't get what did St Kilda get? They got a top 10 pick from St Kilda or for compensation, but that also is because St Kilda finished, I think they were bottom 4. So I think the best we'll get is a late first round pick. It might, even with I don't know. I don't know how many academy players are in this draft and father sons. I know there's a few. So that late first round pick might actually end up being an early second rounder. But you take it. You look at how much of an impact draftees are having coming into AFL now. You look at Lawler's game, Josh Traynor, Harry Armstrong, Murphy Reed, who went way later than I thought. I think he was a late first round pick, but he could have very easily in another year been a top 5, top 10 pick. And we saw that against Geelong with that incredible 10-minute spurt where he kicked 4 goals. So players like that, they're available in the draft in different rounds. You look at Will Hayes, what he's been able to do, Charlie West. We're still going to find out a bit more about Joel Cochran. We've got to find out a bit more about all these players, to be honest. But they're showing really, really good signs. And I actually can't wait for the VFL. I'm really keen. It starts Saturday at 12. We're doing a watch along. So definitely, if you want to watch along with Pies Footy, then be sure to chuck it on the VFL app through your phone or laptop and then watch with me. Jay Tomo, how you going? Steve-O says, sup champs, I would hate to lose Bruzzy, but look how many backline players we have on our list. Just going back to my conversation before, I don't think many clubs have a Brazy Maynard waiting to pounce on an opportunity in the back six. I think TJ, while he would be a replacement, a suitable replacement, he's not the same type of player, is he? Luke says 900K is fair with what he brings and how he makes the boys stand taller. He's effectively our captain. That's another thing. If he goes to North, who's to say he can't be in leadership team immediately? So that's something that might entice him furthermore. Is Bruzzy in the leadership right now? Let's have a look. Collingwood leadership and now 2025. Let's have a look. Yeah, Bruzzy's in the leadership group, but he's in the leadership group of 7 different players. I'm sure at another club, there's not going to be 7 different players. And I think maybe he'll want a vice captain role. Something like that perhaps might be a way to swindle Bruzzy to a place like North or even St Kilda. Stephanos, how are you? Maynard just saying he could leave to get more money from the Pies. That's exactly what he's implying, and I don't blame him for that consideration. Definitely not. John says no one wants to go to the Saints no matter how much they pay. Well, it might be perfect timing. They to be fair to St Kilda, they have a list that is on the precipice of taking their club to finals again. It's maybe not this year, but they've got really nice players in the right age bracket. If they can retain the likes of Wanganang Malira, Jack McRae, if he's there for a few years, Jack Steele sticks around. If Max King gets healthy, if you throw in a Brazy Maynard and a De Koning or even a Finn Callahan who's already signed on at GWS, that's not going to happen. But if they can add someone like that, who knows what St Kilda can be in the next couple of years. Big Man says, if Bruzzy was to leave, would someone like LDU be someone we would want in return? Albeit, we will need to give up picks as well, I'd say. Yeah. So, Big Man, we would have to give up picks for LDU because he's a restricted free agent. He's served the club for 6-7 years, and he's in the top 25% of the club's earnings. Therefore, we would have to firstly provide a contract offer, and then North can match that. If they match that, then we go into trade discussions regarding picks. But there is a world where North, because if they aren't going well, and they'll know by the time they need to have these discussions with teams about they finish in the bottom 4, they might just take the compensation for a top 5 first round pick rather than going to the trade table and negotiating with a club like Collingwood who don't have any first round picks really to offer up. So that's something that could potentially happen and that's probably only likely if LDU nominates Collingwood, because if he doesn't nominate Collingwood in particular, and then it's a fair playing field, we probably won't get him because we don't have the picks available that teams like St Kilda and North and Geelong will find a way to get picks available. Like, that's just the way it is. Heaps of chatter here. I love it, guys. Harold Sun reckons Bruzz is on less than 500K. That would be an abomination if Bruzzy is less than 500k. Caleb says the people's captain will cry for leave. I think we'll all shed a tear for the great man. Bruzzy is VC at the Pies. Okay. Well, I'm sure he would expect nothing less if he was to go to another club. So Oscar Allen, guys, this was something I earmarked early last year. Just planting a seed, right? My point back then, and it still stands, is he's been at a club that has been perpetually failing for the last 7 years, ever since their premiership season. He's had inconsistencies with his knee. He's now playing for a side in the present day in 2025 where they look like they're going to be a bottom four side once again. It seems like Harley Reid won't last there. So what confidence does that give Oscar Allen staying at the club and never really having a proper tilt at premiership glory, especially with his injury concerns? He's probably thinking, shit, if I stay here, I'm cooked. I could be cooked. Yes, he's homegrown. He supported the club growing up. He's a captain of the club. I'm pretty sure if he's not the captain, he's the vice captain. Those things are all valid. But at the end of the day, if you want to contest and compete at the top level and be surrounded by the best players in the league, like Nick Dacos, like De Goey, learn from the likes of Pendlebury, Sidebottom, Myercheck, Membry, McStay, Elliott, the list goes on, then why wouldn't he consider it? Why wouldn't he consider a lifestyle change? Does he want something different compared to what he's accustomed to in Western Australia? So he's another player who will be a restricted free agent. I'll just double check. Let me check. Bear with me. Out of contract. Let's see. Let's get to West Coast. So Oscar Allen, this is his eighth year of service at the club. He's a restricted free agent. So another similar case where if he was to nominate Collingwood, the AFL could just compensate the Eagles for not matching the contract that Collingwood offer Oscar Allen. That is our best situation. But once again, similar to LDU, if he doesn't nominate a club and it's a free-for-all, it becomes increasingly more unlikely that Collingwood will have a chance at someone like Oscar Allen. That's one of the variables in this conversation that make or break the potential of getting someone like Oscar Allen at the club. And it sounds like, based on listening to Gettable today with, I think it's Cal Twomey and Riley Beveridge, they were talking about how the Pies are engaging with trying to acquire someone like Oscar Allen. And he was drafted, so if he's served this is his 8th year, take that back to 2015. So he'd be what? 20? Sorry, guys, I've absolutely cooked that, haven't I? You know what? When you can't do basic maths, you just refer to Google. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Oscar! If you're watching, we want you at the club. And yeah, so he's 26 today. And there are other clubs eyeing him off. We're looking at Collingwood, who have entered the race. Brisbane and Hawthorn are also two other clubs who are interested in Oscar Allen's services. If he's not looking for the hustle and bustle that the Melbourne lifestyle forces upon you, then maybe Brisbane is look, to be honest, Brisbane sounds like a perfect fit with no Joe Danaher there. The media isn't as crazy. The weather's nice there. It's like hot like Western Australia. Then maybe that would be his first consideration. Hawthorn, a club that are going to be a premiership fancy this year. And if he likes the culture of the young kids, the cool kids at the Hawks, then maybe he goes there. Or does he just want to join the biggest club in the land, that is Collingwood, and be under the tutelage of greats of the game and under a great coach in Fly McRae? So Will says Brazy Maynard is the modern day Darren Mullane. I love that. Has Bruzzy won the Darren Mullane medal before? Surely. What are you guys saying about Bruzzy? So 42 votes and 74% of you say Bruzzy will remain at Collingwood. Interesting. All right, just catching up to the comments, guys. I need to. I think I am getting a little bit of feedback lag, so I just need to close a couple of apps here because I don't want you guys to be looking at a shaky screen. Hopefully that's better. Oscar Allen, Steve says, hold on. Peter G says Shane O'Brien has got his work cut out already. Great point, Peter. And he was under the great man Stephen Wells at Geelong, who's managed to get some great players to the club. Most recently, Bailey Smith. He's gotten Tyson Stengel. He's helped get Patrick Dangerfield, Jeremy Cameron to the club. So, if you want the right man, if there was ever the right man to get a certain big player like LDU or Oscar Allen or Jamari Ugle-Hagan or Christian Petrarca or the Bon and the list goes on, then I think we're in good hands with Shane O'Brien. Tie that in with what Leppich was able to accomplish in the offseason for us. I think we're in good hands. I think this is our best opportunity to get a big fish. Yeah, Dan Houston was a big fish as well. Dual All-Australian. He's already doing great things for the club. But I think a player like Oscar Allen's a different kind of big fish, if that makes any sense. Steve-O says, Oscar Allen, his knees are no good. Keep away from Collingwood. Yeah, there was that article that came out in the preseason how a specialist overseas said he has the knees of a 40-year-old. But then, look, that could be true. But then I'm watching the game again between West Coast and Gold Coast, and I don't know if this is anything to go by, but Oscar Allen didn't have any knee strapping. So if you have the knees of a 40-year-old, don't you think you'd at the very least be wearing strapping? We'll find out. We'll know about his knees this year. We'll find out about his continuity, his health status, and see where that all lands at the end of the year. Peter G says, no to Allen. We should be looking at a gun mid and strengthen the back six and go for Lee Kalia. Lee Kalia is a good shout. He's someone who's definitely been on my radar in the past. However, Leak he's a player who's struggling to fit in the GWS side. And granted, they've got an outstanding backline. Like they've got Sam Taylor, they've got Dylan. Is it Dylan Buckley or Simon Buckley, who's incredibly underrated, and then you've got Connor Iden, who's there as well, who's a similar type of player to Leak. Maybe not so much, but maybe in between a Lee Kalia and a Buckley. Then they got Connor Stone, who's starting to establish himself in the side. So I can definitely see Lee Kalia coming to the club. He wouldn't be a big fish. He'd definitely be a gap filler in one way or another. And then, like you said, we should be looking at a gun mid. Well, yeah, Perryman's not a gun mid. He's that player who's just an exceptional role player, and that's what he'll be for the club, I believe. And we saw on the weekend, he's not going to be your out and out go to midfielder. He played on the half back line at certain times throughout the game. He only had like 15 touches for the game. So, look, there's obviously room in that midfield engine room to bring in a high quality player like the LDUs of the world, but we'll find out. Thomas McGuan comes in as more of an outside player, and of course, being a draftee who isn't even at the club yet, he's someone that will need some time to adapt to the game. I know I said before that there are a lot of great players coming in through the draft who are having immediate impact. Like you look at, was it Lindsay from Melbourne as well, who played on the wing and he was outstanding. I can see Thomas McGuan being a really good winger for Collingwood initially as an outside player. And he has a really good running capacity. He's a really good connector. So to be able to tie in Thomas McGuan in that wing station with Patrick Lipinski and, say, Jack Crisp at the moment, I think that would be the best way to go with someone like Thomas McGuan at the moment. John asks, does Oscar know Nick Dacos? It would be handy. I'm sure Nick Dacos would have his number somewhere. Phil says, did Bruzzy actually say he wants more because he's better than Houston and Perriman? If he did, you don't say those things in public. He didn't say he wanted more, but he was definitely implying look, he was either implying that Collingwood aren't coming to the table with the conversation that he wants to have, or maybe they're not so rapid and rushed to come to an agreement just yet. It could be that, or it could be, Bruzzy's agency are asking for X amount. Look, you say he's better than Houston and Perryman. I don't think, based on footy ability, you can argue maybe Bruzzy's better than Perryman right now. But Bruzzy, as far as genuine football talent, he's not as good as Houston. So the point still stands. He's probably going to be asking for the 800 to 900 range for sure. JC says, I'd rather strengthen our backline rather than pick up Allen. I was looking at players out of contract this year, looking at players out of contract at the end of next year. There's not a great deal of options in the backline, I'll be honest. Who'd I pin? Ryan Marrick from West Coast. You've got Lee Kalia, who could be in the conversation as well. There's not a large pool of key position defenders that are looking to move clubs or at the back end of their contract. If you guys have any in mind, please put it in the comment section. Luna says Tom will be the Steele replacement. Yeah, I think we'll Steele, most of his time should reside in the midfield moving forward. There's no question about that. So I think, Thomas McGuan could be that outside player. We'll find out in the Coates Talent League whether Tom, because he does play on ball, but he usually isn't that guy who is winning the first possession from the ruck contest. That's like your Ned Long. Nick Dacos actually played that role quite heavily last year due to who was missing from our side. So I'll keep a close eye on it, and I'm sure, like most of you will, we'll see if Thomas McGuan is looking to add that inside game, which you need. You want to be an inside-out player. They're the most lucrative players in the league and the most prosperous players to grace the AFL field. If you can play inside and out, like Nick Dacos proved last year, you are the opposite of a dime a dozen, or whatever that is. Dom says, just pay Bruzzy the same money as Perryman. Problem solved. Interesting. It sounds simple, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Aldin says Bruzz isn't going anywhere. Who knows, man? Who knows in this world? We thought Dan Houston wouldn't leave Port Adelaide. You probably wouldn't have thought way back when that Patrick Dangerfield would leave would leave Adelaide. Jeremy Cameron, like, these players just don't expect to leave, but they end up doing that. Steve-O says, if we looked at Hawthorn's game plan, you need to be able to be quick and have elite foot skills. And I think that's something that Thomas McGuan will bring. He's really a really good user by foot. Patrick Lipinski, to a lesser extent, fits that caper as well. Nick Dacos, Josh Dacos. It is a league where you need to have good kicking skills. That's just where the AFL is at right now. And you look at Carlton, who really, really struggle in that area, and it doesn't matter how much grunt and fight they have. I'm willing to go early on this. I just don't think they have the kicking talent to take them to a premiership. Can they make finals? Sure. They've got one of the GOATs, Patrick Cripps. They've got Charlie Kerner and Mackay there. They've got Wiedering, who's one, in my opinion, if he's not the best defender in the league, he's second behind Sam Taylor. Just on those players to carry your squad through. Tom de Koning is going to become the best ruckman in the next couple of years, if not this year. They'll get through on that basis, but they're not going to be able to pick apart sides like a Hawthorn. St Kilda do it well, but they're at a different phase of their trajectory. Who else is a good kicking team? Western Bulldogs. So, and we're trying to emulate that. We were a good defensive half side in 22 and 23, but it wasn't pretty. It was quite chaotic. It was a lot of handballs, forward handballs, knock-ons, whereas teams like Hawthorn are doing it differently. Brisbane really thrived with Dane Zorko off halfback last year. When Kadeen Coleman's healthy, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. It's going to be difficult against these sides. And I'll be honest, Carlton don't scare me like Hawthorn do. And that point was made last year, and it still stands. Chris says, do you think Collingwood could get Denver Granger Barras for a trade? Chris, I don't even think Granger Barras is in the league anymore, I'll be honest. John says, those players all left their clubs to return home, Houston included. Bruzzy's already at home. His heart and soul, these players are protected at Pies. Well, you do give me some solace, John. I do hope that is the case in the end, that we get to keep Bruzzy and make him a one club player. We've done a good job in keeping one club players. Brody Myercheck's a one club player. Pendles, Sidey, Jamie Elliott, Darcy Moore, DeGoey, Nick Dacos, Josh Dacos. To be fair, we really do well in retaining these players and making them Pies players for life. Big Man says Jaden Laverde could be a shout. Laverde could be a shout. Fair call. I'm going to get the tipping going, guys. So let me open it up. Give me one moment. Jaden Laverde could be a shout. He's probably just, you probably wouldn't want to add to the age bracket that we already have right now going into next year. I think maybe Laverde this year and like a Tomlinson could have been worth consideration. Who knows if Ash Johnson is placed on the long-term injury list, then maybe we go for someone in the VFL who's thriving as a key position defender. Look at Jacob Blight and what he was able to do before he got subbed out against Carlton. He was playing in the waffle, for goodness sake. So there are those players out there, and more of those players will pop up from time to time. So look, we'll keep an eye on the VFL and we'll see if we can acquire a player in the mid-season draft if Ash Johnson is placed on the long-term injury list. Maybe that's the way we can bolster our key defense stocks. John says that's what separates us from the rest. Great selling point to attract more talent, 100%. There's stability in the club and good culture is an imperative, isn't it? All right, footy tips. I think everyone did pretty well in footy. What did you guys? Let me know in the comments. How many tips did you get right this week? Tell me that. Let me know. If you're in the Pies footy tipping competition, how are we going? I think I got 8 from 9, which I imagine, although that sounds nice, to be fair, it's probably a score that a lot of players got. How many players? So I'll share the screen. Let's go here. Peter got 7. All right, let's have a look. So if anyone's here, give us a shout. But we had what? We had 25 players get 8 tips right this week. So let's get into the tips for this week. If you guys aren't in the league just yet, I'll share a link before I leave because we're leading into round 2 now, so there's still plenty of time to have a crack. It's a $300 grand prize, no entry fee, winner takes all. If you're not first, you're last. All right, I think this one's obvious. Let's go Hawthorn by 25. So Collingwood are $1.55. That's decent odds, I'd say. If you're a punting man, I'll go Collingwood. Ooh, Essendon and Adelaide at the G. I do remember Adelaide played quite well against Collingwood at the G was it the Indigenous round where DeGoey kicked that clutch winning goal? I liked Essendon's game. Look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tip Adelaide, but once I do all my tips, I'm going to see who my smokey's going to be. We'll go Port. They'll bounce back. Geelong, I think they're going to be too strong for St Kilda, although St Kilda do play very well at Marvel. Against Geelong, I think they beat them twice at Marvel in recent times. Brisbane get the job done at the Gabba. North versus Melbourne. Melbourne were really impressive against GWS, showed that GWS were human after the game they had against us. Fremantle versus Swans. Look, this is a big game for both already. This is big for Longmire. This is big for the Swans. They're 0-2. On that basis, I'm going to go the Swans. Oh, and there's already 2 buys. Yuck. There's already 2 buys. What's that about? Goodness gracious. This opening round. Seriously. All right. Well, in which case, my smoky is going to be Essendon. Because that's a 50-50. Look, I could go Fremantle because majority of you are split on these 2 here. But the biggest smoky, if I go Essendon here, my rationale tells me that I'll be ahead of the curve if I can get up on Essendon. Most people are tipping Hawks, Pies. Most are tipping Port. Most are tipping Geelong, Brisbane, Melbourne, and the Swans are slight underdogs. $2.25. That's a sneaky shout as well. If you want a multi, you go Swans into Melbourne, into like a Brisbane 40 plus, and then Collingwood, because why not? So I'll quickly share you guys the link if you guys want to be. I didn't do my tips. Fuck. Invites. Hold on 1 second. Settings. Is that where it is? Here we go. There you go. There's the link there, guys. If you want to join, I'm gonna have to do my tips again. Goodness gracious. Let's go tip now. All right. Hawks, Collingwood, Essendon, Port, Geelong, Brisbane, D's, Swans. Submit. All right, there you go. Guys, again, I appreciate you all being here today. If you're still here and you want to support the channel, the best way to do that is to become a member of the channel. It's $5 a month. It would mean a lot to keep this channel going. It's a passion project of mine, so I appreciate all your support. And tomorrow we'll be back for Moving to Magnets at 5:45. The teams are released at 6:20. We'll do a pre-game show on Friday. Post-game show will be around 11:15, depending what time I get back from the game. We'll be back on Saturday for the VFL watch-along, and we'll see you guys soon. Go Pies.